Ready. Play.
I'm here with James to reflect on the two semi-finals that have taken place, but also look forward to tomorrow's final in Monte Carlo, which is going to be contested between Carlos Alcaraz and Lorenzo Musetti. But let's look at how Musetti got to the final, first of all, because I have to say, an hour into the match, it didn't really look like it was going to be the Italian in the final. In fact, at one point, when it was 3-love to de Minaur, I was getting ready to tweet, is de Minaur ever going to lose a game ever again? Because that would have been 12, 15, 16, 17 games in a row. Yeah, he was just on a roll at that point and ended up winning that first set 6-1. So where did it all go wrong for Alex, or where did it all go right for Lorenzo?
I would certainly say it went wrong for Lorenzo in terms of it's been a bit like his last couple of matches. He's just come out slightly slow and slightly as though his tactics are all over the shot. He's been trying to run around forehands when he should be using the backhand. And I think it was a situation where Alex did a very good job at the beginning of the set the beginning of the first set to know that Lorenzo was going to feel a little bit tired from the last match and trying to bring into that. And trying to bring himself into that contest, that if he smothered Lorenzo, it may panic him, and in a way that did sort of panic Lorenzo, where the unforced error count went up quite highly, and Lorenzo really didn't know where to place the ball, and also he was a little bit too passive, and it was a bit of a theme going into the sets 2 and 3 that Lorenzo lost that passiveness, really became quite aggressive, and that then enabled him to be able to either get some mistakes out of the Alex's serve, or for him to be able to at least get a few more free points. And against Alex de Minaur, it's really crucial that you can get as many free points as possible, because he can smother you, as we've seen with the Dimitrov match, where he just was all over Dimitrov and was giving him nothing free whatsoever. And the passiveness that Dimitrov showed in that match meant that he lost so many points.
Unusual for de Minaur to give away as much as he did, but nevertheless, Lorenzo was there to pick up the pieces and fully deserves his spot in tomorrow's final with a 3-set win. He's going to come up against Alcaraz. He has a 3-1 deficit on the head-to-head to the Spaniard, but we'll get into that shortly. First of all, I'd like to reflect on Alcaraz's semi-final today against Davidovich Fokina. Alcaraz was kind of always in front on the scoreboard. I don't think we saw quite the sparkle and the heroics that we saw against Fils yesterday. But then, of course, that's also partly down to Davidovich Fokina on the other side of the net, who got off slowly. I mean, obviously going down an early break in that first set, and you can't really afford to get off to that slower start. However, as Alcaraz can do, he did let off Alejandro a little bit in that first set. And for what was looking like a comfortable set for him, suddenly we're into a tie-break, just like we were in Barcelona in their previous encounter. But just like in Barcelona as well, Alcaraz ends up emerging from that tie-break, winning 7-6, and then taking the next set as well, 6-4. So an identical scoreline. Your thoughts on that match, James?
Yeah, it was one of those things where I don't know if it's to do with the surface and the fact that this is probably one of the slowest clay courts that we will have in the main clay court season, but it is neutralizing a lot of Alcaraz's serve, and he is being a little bit too passive at times when it comes to his own service games, and it's enabling his opponents, as we've seen with the Fils game yesterday, where Fils was able to get 4 or 5 breaks throughout the entire match on the Alcaraz serve, and with the amount of times that Alejandro, certainly in the first set, was able to be able to break Alcaraz. Certainly when Alcaraz won a couple of break up early in the first set and then a break up late in the first set, but was still pegged back. It is allowing his opponents more time and more opportunities on his serve. And, it's been pointed out that, Alcaraz really hasn't got out of potentially, maybe third, maybe fourth gear throughout the entire tournament. Where he would be more lethal, where he would be more crucial, have those fangs in those key moments to make sure that his opponent couldn't get back into the set, and that was sort of apparent here, where those opportunities came. He allowed his opponent to come back, made a few silly errors, allowed his opponent to be able to hit or be aggressive against him. Which if you rush Alcaraz, you can get some success off that. And that seems to have sort of carried over here. But there was certainly a degree of inevitability, it felt as though, with this match, where yes, okay, Alejandro came back in the first set of parts, but you never really felt as though Alcaraz was going to lose it. That he was going to be able to find a little bit of magic either on Foki's serve at any point or on his own serve, certainly in the second set, just to get himself over the line. And eventually, that's what sort of played out. I mean, there was a thing with Foki when it came to a few of his unforced errors, of a few opportunities he may have had, certainly in that second set, to get back into it. And he hit a few wild forehands, and it's been something that has broken down for him at parts during this week. It has been his forehand, and you'll know that if he was able to get that working a little bit more, he may have been more competitive and potentially maybe even taken a set in this match here. But you can't take away from Alcaraz. From not showing up at all against Draper, or at least feeling as though he was going to be second best before he entered the court against Draper, and then the horror show against Goffin in the Sunshine Double, to be able to sort of go from that to now not even playing your best tennis to get yourself to the final of the next Masters event, certainly back on the surface that he loves on clay. It was really good going for him, and and he's potentially going to be able to get a title that he's never won before, which feels bizarre to say given how well he plays on the clay.
I'm just going to move locations because it's a bit loud here, so don't worry, I'll fix this afterwards, James, but I need about 20 seconds just to get a bit further away from the TV, which was off when we was doing that peaceful thing when we began, but don't worry, I'll find a slightly quieter corner. Here we go.
It's good to know the concern looks weren't with what I was saying there.
No, they weren't. I was just trying to think about how to do this. Okay, cool. All right, yes, indeed. So Alcaraz, in fact, has a 90% win-loss record on the grass combined with the clay over the last 52 weeks. That's 27-3. Thanks to Mario for tweeting that out to the world. And so Alcaraz is in the final. As I say, he'll be playing Lorenzo Musetti tomorrow. And as I said earlier, it's a 3-1 head-to-head. In fact, Musetti won their first encounter, which was on the clay in Hamburg, actually in the final of Hamburg in 2022. But then it's 3 wins in a row now for Carlos, also winning on the clay at Roland Garros in 2023, and then also on hard, and then hard again at the Miami Masters last year. So 3-1 head-to-head in favor of Carlos. How do you see this match playing out tomorrow, James?
I think the weather could play a factor. It's not scheduled to go well tomorrow, the weather. It's going to be quite miserly, quite rainy throughout the entirety of today. If they're able to even get the match completed tomorrow, it's going to be a bit of a miracle, but that is going to make things a lot more heavier. And in a situation with these two players matching up against each other, reflecting back to that Hamburg final, which took place 3 years ago, it was very hot, very sunny conditions, which enabled the ball to be a bit more lively, for the court to be a bit more lively, and that gave Lorenzo just that little bit more to be able to rush Alcaraz. I don't think we're going to be having those conditions tomorrow, and I think the heaviness will benefit Alcaraz quite substantially, to the extent that he will be able to hit through the conditions, but I don't think Lorenzo will be able to. I could imagine maybe Lorenzo having a tight set somewhere, maybe in the first or the second, but I wouldn't. I see it. I find it hard to see that we're going to go past an Alcaraz win here. Maybe in straight sets, potentially, maybe in 3, just because he will be able to deal with those conditions, those heavier conditions, much better than probably Lorenzo will. Because we saw it parts of the de Minaur match when it started to rain a little bit more, and it got a little bit more heavier, just even in small parts. That's when de Minaur was able to really, get back on top, certainly in that third set. So I very much feel as though Alcaraz is going to be able to hit through, become the main aggressor, be able to, a key thing for Alcaraz will be that he'll want to try and keep his unforced error count down. It has been a little bit too high in the last few matches, but still, I think he'll be able to handle the heavier conditions better.
Listen, when Carlos is in a final, he normally ends up winning. And because one of the reasons I think he loses tennis matches against players that are not quite at his level, which is pretty much the entire tour, give or take 1 or 2 players, is often focus, and I don't see focus being an issue tomorrow. Of course, he may have to deal with a rain hit match, as you suggested. I think they probably will get it done one way or another tomorrow. I mean, who knows? As you say, it's going to be a rain hit day, but they have obviously moved it to midday local time to help them have as many hours, light hours, or as many hours in the day as they can to get it done. So fingers
And
crossed.
can I just say how much it's really good to see that a tournament is being proactive like that? How many times have we had tournaments that have been so rigid to stick to a schedule when it's clear that if they moved it forward a couple of hours or move something back a couple of hours, then they would be okay to be able to get the match completed. So kudos to the Monte Carlo club for making that decision.
Definitely. Although I don't think it'll end up affecting the result, and I'm like you, I'm leaning towards Carlos. Very much so. Maybe even be straight sets. I think if he's got his eye on it, and to be honest, today was a lot more controlled, even than the match against Feast, where okay, he did lose some, miss some match points against Davidovich Fokina today. They came and went, but then he came to serve it out, and you're thinking, well, are those match points going to play on his mind? Are they going to prove to be a distraction? And he's like, no, I'm going to get this done and get it done as he did in straight sets over his friend, who I hope to Alejandro, that invitation for Carlos is, so the invitation to Carlos for Alejandro's wedding is still valid, despite the result today. Funny that Carlos mentioned that pre-match, but yes, I do also remember the Musetti Alcaraz match at the French Open in 23, going into that because Lorenzo had a pretty good clay court season. I think that's the year that he beat in Monte Carlo. Then he beat Djokovic, I think, that particular year. And there was a lot of anticipation. There was a lot of anticipation about that Musetti Alcaraz match being a real test, maybe even the biggest test for Alcaraz before the semi-final they ended up having with Djokovic. And yet Alcaraz just swatted him aside with consummate ease. Probably won't be quite as easy tomorrow, but I can see it being done in 2 straight sets. James, thanks very much.
I mean, it's also that's okay. It's just also worth just noting that when and I've tweeted out about it that this is now the second match this season that's going to be contested between 2 players born in the 2000s, and that before this year we had no matches in the Masters series that were contested between 2 players born in the 2000s. So it's really starting to show this year that almost changing of the guard. We have Rune versus Draper at Indian Wells. We've got Musetti versus Alcaraz here at Monte Carlo. It's shaping up that the young guns are really taking control this year.
Absolutely, James. And we're going to look forward to that match tomorrow and see how it pans out. But that's the thoughts of James and myself. And now you're going to get a reminder because you know what the drill is. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.